How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Relentless Growth Podcast. I'm your co-host, Jack Maher, over here in Spring Hill, Tennessee, here with my good friend Chase Calhoun in Little Rock, Arkansas. And we've got a really exciting topic today, talking about our respective states and migration and kind of what that means to us. But first, we're going to do what we always do. We're going to start out with wins and a little bit of an update. So, Chase, what's a win? What's an update on your end?
Yeah, I think I'll go. I guess this would be a twofold, a win and an update, kind of related. We've got a project where we're attempting to build single family homes with ADUs. There was a new state law that was passed into Arkansas that allows that by right, so without doing any kind of rezoning changes. Although the law just finally went into effect last week, and so I'd say that's the win, that the law's here and it's been officially place. And then like a little bit of an update would be, I guess, around the same thing. So we attempted to start construction since it's now in place. And we've seen we got a lot of pushback from the city. So it was interesting because they kind of just, they gave us a stop work order on the machinery that was out there clearing trees, and then they refused to approve our permit. And I think they were just kind of scrambling. They waited till the last minute to try to make some decisions around this. And so we met with the city, and I think the results of the meeting was positive, at least from what I'm being told. We're being asked to jump through what I would say a few extra hoops that wouldn't normally be required of us when we're building something, but achievable nonetheless. And so we're hoping to get them everything we need this week, and then expecting to have permits approved by next week so we can start construction. So that's definitely going to be a win. And then a little bit of an update for us. It's 43 lots that we're going to be doing these single family homes with these attached ADUs. And so we're looking at starting the first 6. And so we'll probably start them I'm thinking groups of 6. We'll start 6 now and then maybe 6 in another month or 2. So we're not dumping too many into the market at once. So we're excited. How about you?
No, that's awesome. I'm gonna go personal with it, just to show everybody out there that I'm learning and taking action from our podcast. I'm on day 4 of 75 hard.
Oh, so nice, dude. Nice.
I gave some excuses on why I haven't been able to do it last time, and I figured it's time for that to stop. So I'm on day 4, and it's going well so far. We'll see. But so I'm excited. I'll keep everybody updated on the progress there. But I also started out with a 72-hour fast, which is the longest I've ever fasted. So
yeah,
that was a fun start. So we'll see the results at the end. But I'm excited.
Are you done with the fast now?
Yeah. I broke it last night.
I did that at I don't know. It's been a year or 6 months, but I didn't think it would be that hard. But it was a lot less. It was a lot less fun than I thought it was going to be. To
me, the trick with fasting, what I tell everybody is just don't do it on the weekend.
Yeah,
If you do it during the week, like when you're working, when you got stuff going on, it's a whole lot easier. But weekends are brutal.
Yeah, that's exciting, man. The 75 hard is a lot of fun. It's for me. I've done it twice, and it's always been for me the no man's land is the day 30 through 50-ish. That's usually where it gets tough, and then after that you're so close. It's a little bit easier after that. But so it's exciting though. Curious to see how it goes.
That's awesome. Well, kind of let's dive in. Talking about migration, population trends. How is that? How have you seen that show up in Little Rock? With your business.
So it's interesting. I guess maybe to backtrack a little bit, the way that this kind of came up is we posted a video on social media the other day talking about how I'd seen at some point, and I think it was with one of my family members moved here. They shared this Facebook group with me, and I joined the Facebook group, and it was basically people leaving California is the name of the Facebook group, and so it's all about people who are trying to get it move out of California to somewhere else. And so it was interesting for me because I left California and moved to Arkansas eight years ago. So almost exactly 8 years ago now. And it's funny, in the span of one day, I think I saw 3 posts pop up on that group. There were people, not just people leaving California, because it's people leaving California to go anywhere in the U.S., but it's people leaving California to move to Arkansas. And so I thought it was interesting. We posted about it, and there was a bunch of back and forth banner about it. And then I guess for me personally, so I personally left California and moved to Arkansas. And since doing that, pretty much all of my immediate family have also done that. So my parents, my mother-in-law, my grandmother, my brother and his wife. And so like I've personally seen a lot of people doing it. And then again, I think just being here in Central Arkansas, I run across a ton of people just on a daily basis that either moved here, and it seems like a lot of people have moved here from California, and there's also a lot of people that have moved here from Texas. And so I think people that are leaving places like California are also going to Texas, and you're seeing people moving from Texas to Arkansas. And for me, it seems like a lot of it's really closely related just to the cost of living being a little bit cheaper here. There's a lot of jobs here, and it's a little bit cheaper to live. And so there's people that are migrating this way just to kind of enjoy some of that. And you're in Spring Hill, Tennessee, which seems like over the last couple of years has been one of the most popular places to move to. Because I also know people who moved from California to Spring Hill, Tennessee. So what are you guys seeing with that?
Yeah, we saw, obviously, you were really ahead of the curve with your move. I think Tennessee kind of got on California's map, so to speak, mid 2000s. Nissan moved here. And so they moved their corporate headquarters from California to here. And that kind of started a trend of corporate relocations from California to, the Nashville MSA. Most recently is In-N-Out. And so we were supposed to have their regional headquarters. And then last week or the week before, it came out that the CEO is moving here too. And so we're going to end up with their national headquarters. And so I think that's kind of been like the thing that spurred on the growth. And then, obviously kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, which is probably similar to Little Rock, was, COVID, when, there were certain states that handled it more differently than other states. And so that spurred on a big influx of population. And so we saw similar states. We saw California more than anything. We saw Illinois. We saw New York. We even saw Florida a little bit. And so we saw a lot of growth. And yeah, it's interesting. I think everybody thinks about, people moving from California, buying, $10 million houses after they sold their 1,000 square foot house. And what we've seen some of that, obviously there's a lot of that, but we've gotten a decent amount of employees out of California. And so I think the thing that enough people don't talk about is everybody across the spectrum is moving. And so, it's not just the wealthy people. You've got, you got laborers, you got skilled craftsmen, you got a bunch of people moving. And without that, I think we would both probably be in a world of hurt because, it's hard to find people to get work done. And when demand increased, the transfer of skilled population from one area to another was a big help to us that I was not really thinking about on the surface, And so that's something that popped up for us that has definitely been a net benefit over time.
So I think one thing that people don't realize, and I think it's a little bit of a misconception, is that I think people assume that people that live in California make like way more money than people who live in Arkansas or Tennessee. So in my past work experience, I looked at payroll on a daily basis for a bunch of different companies. Hundreds, if not thousands in California. And then I did that for a while here early on in Arkansas. And one thing that blew my mind is that pay gap is not, it exists in certain industries. Maybe it's a little bit more exacerbated because they're trying to find more, they're willing to pay more in California to find that those highly skilled or technical jobs or whatever. But especially when you look at blue collar jobs, like workforce type jobs, in my opinion, the pay was very similar. And so you take somebody that's working maybe a lower skilled, lower paid job somewhere like California. And again, there's exceptions here, especially like in construction when you have some of these like special jobs that require certain pay rates. But you put that aside and you just take somebody, for example, that's a mechanic at a Toyota dealership. And what they make as a mechanic at a Toyota dealership in California is almost exactly the same as what they could make as a mechanic at a Toyota dealership in Arkansas, if not identical. And so you take people that are in those situations that are just looking for a better quality of life. If they can make the decision to move somewhere that's more affordable to live, it's a huge net benefit for them because they can come here with a job, make the same amount of money, it's cheaper to live, therefore they have better cost of living. I know for me personally, that contributed dramatically to me being able to become more successful, because I was able to make the same amount of money, live a lot cheaper, and then take the net that was left over and invest it aggressively. And so it's a
Well,
big
and I
deal.
think we heard that a lot through COVID with people moving. And I think, there's other aspects of that as well. I remember talking to a guy who, he was from Illinois, and he was, giving me his pros list for moving. And he's like, I tripled my house size for the same price. I will pay 1/5 or 1/6 in real estate taxes, no state income tax. He's like, I will get a $35,000 raise for moving here. Just, he was a virtual employee, so keeping his same job. He's like, I'll get that big of a raise just by moving states, have a lower living expense, have a bigger house. And so, I think there's a lot of things that go into it for sure. But one of the interesting things, the only job that I've found that pays significantly more in California is police and fire.
Yeah.
And so we've actually sold some houses to police and fire who will commute back. That's how much they want to live in Tennessee.
Crazy.
They'll trade shifts around, fly back, work a full 2 weeks, then come back to Tennessee for 2 weeks. And it seems crazy to me, but, obviously pensions, retirement, all the stuff that California has that is good for them long term, that they're trying to keep. And so we've had some interesting situations where people are living here but still commuting back to work in California.
The commute back thing I could see, especially for fire, because they're able to trade their shifts around like that. So that's something you used to hear about a lot. I personally knew somebody who, and this was years ago, this was over 10 years ago. He quit his job in law enforcement, making over 6 figures, so over $100,000 a year when you factor in overtime. And so just because there's unlimited overtime, he quit that job. He literally moved to North Little Rock, Arkansas, and took a police job making like $47,000 a year. And it's funny, I reconnected, and it's been a long time since I've talked to him, but I reconnected with him, and his quality of life was better here. So even though he took a huge pay cut, it's like he was able to buy a house and paid off free and clear out the country. And it's like he just had a much better quality of life. Plus the politics here and the job and like all that other stuff was, maybe a little bit better. He works in kind of a rough area still. So I don't know, maybe not, but there's a lot of benefit there. The other thing, like you mentioned, COVID, I know COVID really spurred a lot of that migration to Tennessee. But even like Arkansas. So my parents specifically, they were adamantly, they came and visited a couple times, and they're like, we'll never move to Arkansas. It's just not gonna happen. Not for us. We love California too much. But I very distinctly remember they came to visit us like 8 months into the whole COVID debacle. And it's just like, dude, they've been locked in their house. Like they couldn't leave. Nothing was open. Like they couldn't go do anything. They couldn't go eat at a restaurant. And then they show up in Arkansas, and Arkansas, like, 2 months into the whole thing was kind of business back to normal. And so it's like, hey, where do you guys want to go eat? Like, hey, you take the mask off. You don't have to wear that shit here. And so it's just like the being able to like going from like, oh, they're like locked down in their houses, all these fires. And it's like, they come here and it's just like normal again. And so that was the final straw for that. They came visit, and they're like, we're putting our house on the market and we're moving. And then the housing thing, they sold their tiny little, 1,300 square foot house in California for a ridiculous amount of money and bought a beautiful kind of custom home here for less. So there's a lot of benefits there. One thing when we were looking at this, this the other day, as far as social media stuff goes, just for kind of curiosity, I looked where I used to live in California near my old. Well, what we did is we tried to find a house in California that was like cheap, so we could compare it to a house in Arkansas that was like the same price. And the issue is like, dude, the cheapest house that we could find, like in the whole general area that I lived, was like $700,000. Like that was the cheapest house within like a 30-mile radius. And so it wasn't even like a nice neighborhood. It was right next to where I went to high school, but it was very much like, it was a very so-so area back then and probably still today. And it was like a 900 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bath home from like the 30s that it probably hadn't been updated since the 60s, and just ugly. And that was $700,000 house. And then we looked in West Little Rock, which is like a very perceived much nicer community area. much higher end houses. And so for that same $700,000 price point, you could get like a 4,300 square foot, 4-bedroom, 4-bath house with a 3-car garage and a pool. You know what I mean? It was just like, it's dramatic. So it was like $700 a square foot versus $140 a square foot. And then, property taxes, employment taxes and all that stuff much lower here. So there really is. It's hard when you compare the two. There's a lot of advantageous, to
Well,
move.
I'll be interested to hear your take on this. One thing that I've noticed that I've been pretty surprised by post COVID is I feel like the growth is pretty spread out. Obviously, it's concentrated in Nashville and in the surrounding communities, but you've got a lot of, historically probably low growth or declining population towns, that are tertiary or even beyond that markets, where you've got people from other places who, man, they've always wanted 20 acres or they want 5 acres or, they want a little hobby farm or, they want a homestead. And so the growth has gone out so much farther than I ever thought it would. And I mean, you've got little pockets of just normal houses. And then you've got pockets of $5-10 million houses where I couldn't have never would have predicted they would have, accumulated that. And so it's been really interesting to see the spread of growth through the migration as well. It's obviously always concentrated on larger areas, but there's been some pockets where it's really spread out much farther than I thought it would. I'm curious if that's a similar thing that's happened in Little Rock.
Yeah, very similar, especially with people moving in here. You have a lot of people, if they're still in the workforce, I think they're targeting areas like the Nashville area or Little Rock or places where there's a lot of jobs and stuff. But I think the people that are more retirement age like the idea of retiring and having, they're leaving California. They're coming places like this because they want more space. And I personally know 2 people who retired and moved to Tennessee. One's in Spring Hill because they're still kind of at workforce age. The other guy's he's 2 hours outside of Nashville, out in the country somewhere on acreage, and that's what he wanted. And then same thing, like my parents moved here to Little Rock. They want to be close to us, but they have some good friends that live right down the street from them that moved to outside of Springfield, Missouri, and bought 20 acres with a nice house. And so I think you're seeing a lot of that. I do think with Arkansas as a whole, I think there's some smaller communities that have seen a ton of growth that were, like you said, were probably declining for years. But you've seen more and more people moving in because they don't want to live, they're leaving those big cities. They want to live in a smaller, more rural town. And so we've seen little pockets of Arkansas, the population really start to grow. We looking at it, I think it's still early on, but I think you're going to continue to see some of these communities not grow like crazy, but just steady growth over time where there could be a need for housing. But again, I look at it almost like two hats. It's you have the workforce, because Arkansas's got a bunch of manufacturing jobs and stuff coming into some of these rural areas. So there's going to be a need for workforce housing for people that are there, actually doing the job and working there. But then also you look at places just like communities where, maybe it's retirement, people are hitting retirement age. They want to get out of the big city, but just be inside or close to nice little communities. I see that as a major growth opportunity for Arkansas, especially in the long term, maybe not immediately, but over the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. I'm expecting the same things here, so I'm very interested to see what happens. And I think one thing I'd love for you to touch on, and fortunately, I was born in Tennessee, born in Franklin, Tennessee, so I was born in this area, and it that's a blessing. Turned out to be a fantastic growth area, but obviously, you made a move to a growth area, and I feel like that's not a trend anymore. I feel like people tend to stay put or live where they want to live, not based on economic opportunity. And it used to be a thing. Obviously, people would move across the country chasing jobs. That used to be very much the norm. And I feel like it's not. People live either where they want to live or where they grew up, and the economic factor isn't as much in their thought process. So, kind of talk about your decision to move to Arkansas and kind of, was that scary? Was it a sacrifice? How did you view that decision? Because I think it's something that people have to consider, especially in real estate, if they're trying to, and not to say there's opportunity everywhere. I think we both recognize that you can make money anywhere, you can be successful anywhere, but But if somewhere is declining in population and there's crazy high prices, the opportunities just aren't going to be there like they will be somewhere else. So kind of talk through your thought process and why you made the move, when you made the move, kind of let the audience in on that.
Yeah, man. So I think this is huge. It's like super, super powerful. I don't think nearly enough people do it. And there's no doubt in my mind. Like, again, I think there's opportunity everywhere, and I think people can become successful anywhere. I am not convinced that I would be anywhere close to where I'm at today, success wise, had I not made the decision to move somewhere else where it made more sense to do business for what I wanted to do. And then all of the above, I would say I still see people all the time. I was literally just having this conversation earlier with a friend of mine he's trying to hire somebody right now. And there's a lot of people who get like very stuck in where they grew up. So they born, raised, went to school, and then they spend the rest of their lives just barely getting by. And I hate to be like this, but almost like kind of having a miserable life, because it's like they're living somewhere and they're really just scraping by to make ends meet to survive there, when literally all they have to do is to pick up and move somewhere else. They could do the exact same thing that they're doing there, but they could have a life that's 5-10 times better just because it's a cheaper place to live. And that's really what we did. Like we made the decision to move somewhere else where we could make, literally the conversation I had to the company that I was going to go to work for is, where can you send me and pay me the same amount of money? Like, period. And it was like, here's all the places we could send you. And so it wasn't overly complicated. Now there's a bunch of stuff that happened once we got here that made it more complicated than I didn't expect. But it was very scary when we made that decision to make that move. Our friends and family were against it, and probably for their own reasons. And you guys are going to hate it there. And it's like, everybody thought we were crazy because we were moving to Little Rock, Arkansas, and you're not going to be able to go have sushi. And it's just going to be, people think like, I always joke around, people think like in California, they think of like the Moonshiners TV show when they think of Arkansas. And, it's just Little Rock's not like that. It's a very nice community, and diverse, and lots of places, things to do and places to eat. And so it's just funny. It's like, it was scary when we did it. We moved here. It was hard to adjust. And I would say it took probably a year or two to truly like adjust to it and start to make new friends and figure out where we wanted to live and things to do and all that. But now looking back, like I wouldn't, my only like regret was not doing it sooner or earlier on. And again, I'm not saying that I wouldn't have been successful where I was at, hopefully eventually, but I'm not convinced that I would have. And so it's that move that's been really life-changing for me. And I think more people, if they were doing a job that they feel like they're stuck and they can't get ahead or whatever, if they would just move somewhere else, even though it's scary, like they'd be fine. And it's kind of like I would say the same thing with like employment. Like if you're in a job that you hate, like it's like, get a different job. And it's like, worst case scenario, you can always go back to what you were doing. Like that job that I did for years that I hated. Like if this thing stopped working tomorrow, I could get a job next week doing what I used to do. Like it's still there. So you could always move back if you wanted to. And so I highly encourage people to make that move if they've ever considered it, or to consider it. And it's not just where it's cheaper, but it's like, where could you also have a better quality of life? And so, but people really, they get really stuck and they just don't want to leave where they grew up.
Well, I love it. And granted, I fortunately haven't done that, but I know a lot of people who have, and I think it's really powerful. Now, I normally ask you to give a takeaway at the end, but I feel like you just did that. I think it's such a powerful move. And the reality is, we tour around, we're looking at a lot of tertiary markets right now. And so I've been visiting a lot of small towns, a lot of places maybe I haven't even been before. And they're awesome. I think there's a negative connotation around, a lot of places that aren't, 30 minutes outside a city. And the reality is, yeah, it might not have everything, but it's got a lot of things that a big city doesn't have, and so there are pros and cons to living everywhere. And, bringing it back to our migration discussion, if there's a lower cost of life, if there's more opportunity, and if people are moving there, that's a combination that doesn't exist in a lot of places. And so if you can move somewhere that has that, the rising tide lifts all boats is something my dad always said, and I'm sure he got it from somewhere else. But if a city's on the rise and there's lower cost of living, by virtue of being there, by virtue of being involved, you're going to rise too. And so I think it's really important. But any last comments on it before we wrap, Chase?
Man, I think that's it. I would say the only thing to be aware of, it's like online. I see a lot of people being super negative about kind of like hating on people that want to move into their state. Like, don't bring your politics with you, and we don't want
Yeah.
you here. And you see that online for some reason, but like it's not something that I've experienced in person. So it's kind of like people like to talk smack online because they're behind a keyboard or a computer screen, but that's not, I would say if that's your concern, because I have talked to people that are like scared to move from California to Arkansas because they're worried they're going to be judged, people are going to be mean to them or whatever. It's very clear to people, like when I meet them, that I'm not from here. I mean, I probably get that a million times when I first moved here. You're not from here, are you? And it's just, but everybody's always been super kind and not like that. I personally have had no negative experiences from that. And so I'd say just do it.
No, I think that's a great encouragement. Everybody, if you enjoyed this episode or any of our others, give us a like, give us a follow. If there's something you want us to cover, if you've got questions, leave a comment. We always want to hear from you guys. Appreciate everybody listening to the Relentless Growth Podcast. Obviously, for Chase and I, we appreciate it. We're learning along with you guys. So appreciate everybody tuning in. Thanks, guys. Talk to you all soon.
Have a good one.